Hiya, it's me. We're talking Fatebound as promised. Weekend Fatebound video. This is going to be really long. I know a lot of people haven't played Fatebound ever. So I'm going to be going through from start to finish everything you need to know about playing Fatebound. This is going to be mostly raid. Fatebound in M+ is kind of a little suspicious. So I might make a note of it, but in general, raid-centric, because it's Fatebound, sucks in AoE. So, let's go over it from start to finish. Grab yourself some water. And then let's get into it. First things first, what is Fatebound? How the hell does it work? So, Fatebound, just like Deathstalker, needs a finisher at 5 combo points. However, when you finish with 5 combo points on Fatebound, you instead flip a coin. The coin has 2 sides, heads or tails. Heads you can think of as simply an aura buff, nothing more. It just buffs all your damage for the duration. And the tails coin does instant damage. This instant damage recently got buffed. If you didn't see the patch note video, which I just released, it got buffed by an insane amount. Tails does a ton of damage. This isn't a chance. This isn't on like a specific thing. It's just every time you use a finisher with 5 combo points, you either flip heads or tails. The entire rest of the tree is simply augmenting these flips and then doing a little bit of like supplementary damage. So as long as you understand the core mechanic here, you're good to go. The second part of the coin, however, is as you get more flips in a row, it gets stronger. So the heads buff gets stronger by a couple percent every time you flip heads in a row. So if you have 5 in a row, 6 in a row, 7 in a row, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. The same is true for tails. As you flip 6, 7, 8, 9 times in a row, the tails coin will do more and more and more damage. With that out of the way, let's talk about augmenting the coin through the talents. Mean Streak, first of all, makes it more likely for Envenom to match the previous flip. This is just straight up extending the chain, so this is a good gain. Then you have Delivered Doom. This is part of the reason why Deathstalkers are better in AoE and Fatebound is worse. It just gives you an increased damage to Fatebound's tails coins if there's no other enemies near the target, and it gets reduced as there's more enemies. So in a Mythic Plus and big AoE situations, if you have 6 enemies, 5 nearby targets, this talent doesn't do anything. So, you know, that's just how life works, I guess. From Stealth and from Vanish, you flip 2 coins. They match the same outcome. This is just another, flip augmenting thing. The thing to note is that it matches the same outcome, but it does not match the previous outcome. So if you saw Mean Streak, it matched the last flip. The only thing that Double Jeopardy guarantees is that it matches each other, right? So it's 2 coins that are matching, but they do not match previous flips. They just match each other. So it's 2 coins, same thing, perfect, cool, moving on. The last thing is when you flip a coin for the 7th time in a row, so either 7 heads or 7 tails, you keep the lucky coin to gain 7% agility until you leave combat. Now, notably, in Mythic Plus, this has a 15-second timer, even though the duration says 10, but we don't really care all that much about that. In Raid, you are always in combat. Even when you vanish and AFK, you are still considered in Raid combat. And so this will just be up forever once you have it in a Raid scenario. If you already have this buff and then you get another 7 in a row, it just does a big hit of damage, which is equal to twice the damage of a regular tails flip. So it's a duplicated tails flip, right? And that's about all there is in terms of like coin augmenting, at least passively. So I'm going to cover the last 2 damage talents. The first one is Fate Intertwines. This one's a little bit difficult to explain, but simply when you crit an Envenom, you deal additional damage based on the damage of that Envenom, but only the critical strike damage. So let's say you do an Envenom, it does 100 damage. Good. You do another Envenom, it crits for 200. So you do 100 crit damage, 30% of that crit damage is then duplicated again, so you get a little bit of bonus there. However, when there's nearby targets, the damage instead goes onto the nearby targets. So in 2 targets, if you're hitting this guy, it's going to duplicate onto the other guy. And then in 3 targets, if you hit this guy, it's going to duplicate onto the other 2. Right? This is also a bit of a problem because it should work with Caustic Spatter, but obviously it never hits the targets that you're hitting. It hits the alternate targets, so it doesn't cleave. Then you have Deal Fate. Mutilate, Ambush, Fan, and Knives generate 1 additional combo point when they trigger Seal Fate. Notably, this is not 2 combo points per critical strike. This is 1 combo point upon triggering Seal Fate. So if you Fan of Knives 5 targets, for example, and 5 of them crit, Seal Fate would give you 5 combo points because it's 5 crits. Deal Fate only gives you 1 additional, right? Because it triggers it, but it's per spell. The spell can only technically trigger it once. So this is not doubling the effects of Seal Fate. It is simply adding 1 flat additional point if your ability crits. This does, however, have some implications. For example, Mutilate could go to 5 combo points now if you crit both hands. So, Mutilate into an Envenom instant finisher, that can happen. And then we get to kind of the thing that I've been avoiding the entire time, which is kind of the crux of the situation, right? The rest of it was all kind of fluff. This is the crux of Fatebound and its damage profile in Season 3, Edge Case. When you activate Deathmark, it flips a coin, but it lands on its edge, which counts as both heads and tails. Now, this is not a secret third buff. You can't have a, third outcome, right? This is simply 1 tails and 1 heads at the same time. It iterates on top of these buffs, so they are the same buff. There's no extra stupid thing. And you can only ever flip on the edge. My nose is so itchy. You can only ever flip on the edge from Edge Case. That does not stop you, however, from matching the flip. And you can match the flip through the use of Inevitable End. Or, with the typo, Inevitable End, as I would call it lovingly. Mean Streak makes it more likely to match the same face as the last flip, but it does not match the outcome of the last flip. So there's some very specific wording stuff here, which is why I kind of left it out for the end. But Edge Case is an outcome, and so Cold Blood is guaranteed to match the same outcome as the last flip, not the same face. This does not extend your Edge Case. Inevitable End does, right? And because of that, Double Jeopardy, because it matches itself, if you Cold Blood and then Double Jeopardy, you can match the Edge Case again, right? Because it's matching the outcome. The coin is flipped, it matches the outcome was Edge Case. Okay, so let me just show you what that would look like in practice. Now I do have the tier set on, don't worry about that. So first Inevitable End flips 2 coins. Now I'm going to Envenom. It extended, right? So now I have 3. If I do this again, 4. I'm just getting lucky here, right? This is just luck. 5. And at some point, if I flip, it's going to land on heads again. And it's going to repeat the cycle. So now we're at 7. I get my lucky coin, right? 8. We're just going. 9. This is completely reasonable. 10. Please stop. I'm trying to record a video. I'm just trying to make a point. Give it a second. Hold on. I need it. Okay. The heads, right? The tails goes away and you get heads, right? Completely random, as you saw, because I could not, for the life of me, flip heads. Now, if I press Deathmark, 2 and 3, right? So I get both at the same time. Now, if I were to press Cold Blood, which I have macroed to Kingsbane, right? Kingsbane, now I'm at 4-5 because of the tier set. We'll go over that later. Now I have 2 stacks of Inevitable End, so whenever I Envenom here, it's going to match this flip. And if I Vanish into an Envenom, it matches the flip and flips twice. So there you go. That's how you get the big flips. You get a big all buff, right? This is a 22% increase. And so you easily have big burst built in automatically, flipping both coins. What this also does with the tier set is it guarantees that you get your fateful ending in your opener. This is going to be guaranteed in Season 3. So you don't have to worry about the RNG on this. You will always get fateful end in your opener. Granted that you did your opener correctly and you're not stupid. You can't, like, you can mess this up, but it's your opener, and if you mess up your opener, you kind of deserve to not get this. I'm going to be real. Anyways, the 2 auxiliary ones here, these are not even worth mentioning. This is your defensive option. Leech increased. You get a bunch of leech, but it's not really a bunch of leech because it's fairly weak. And then you have a chance to absorb 10% of any damage taken, any instance of damage, equal to your crit strike chance. So if you have 40% crit, you have a 40% chance to just take 10% less damage. This is usually the preferred one. The leech is okay. Neither one of these are particularly impressive. Then you have these two. Shadow Step can be used a second time within 3 seconds with no cooldown, but its cooldown is increased. This generally is the one that people take because it allows you to step out and then step back in. For example, if you're like dotting a mob that's not in the group. The other one here is you can't be slowed below your normal movement speed if you have an active streak of at least 2 flips. This is very niche. However, you can take it simply to avoid the increase in cooldown here. So whichever way you want to go, again, this isn't really all that impactful. Now, I didn't talk about Destiny Defined. For the sake of you knowing what this does, it is basically just a mean streak. You have an increased chance to apply weapon poisons. Okay, it ramps Kingsbane a little faster. And your Fatebound coins flipped have a 5% chance to match the same face as the last flip. So this is mean streak, but really bad. And it doesn't guarantee your capstone in your opener anymore. Also bad, so you can't do any of that. Don't do any of that. Inevitable End, only way to go, you have to play Cold Blood. If you don't play Cold Blood on Fatebound, there is something significantly wrong, and you will lose a ton of damage. Don't even bother with Destiny Defined. It's awful. So, with that out of the way, you might have looked at this. Yes, Cold Blood, Inevitable End, you need it, required. This is how you do it. You don't take Supercharger. Deeper Stratagem is still very strong, as is Thistle Tea and the extra energy. So, very standard setup here. You would do this even in Mythic Plus. If you are so inclined to play this in Mythic Plus for any reason, some people have been doing this in order to test, but it's not something that I personally recommend. I would just recommend you stick with this forever and always. Okay, so let's talk about what actually changes for Fatebound in Season 3, which is the tier set, and this is the interesting one. You aren't aware, the tier sets in Season 3 are based on the hero talent, so if I swap to Deathstalker, my tier set would swap with me. The Fatebound tier set makes Kingsbane deal increased damage and have 4 seconds of increased duration. The big Kingsbane buff, because 4 seconds increased duration means 4 seconds at maximum stacks, right? It ramps up, but having an increased duration means that you're spending more times at maximum stacks. So that's going to be really, really good. Now, the 4 set makes Edge Case flip an additional Fatebound coin. So when you activate Deathmark, you get 2 coins on their edge instead of 1. But it also makes Kingsbane trigger it, which means every time you press Deathmark into Kingsbane, you are getting a guaranteed 4 stacks of both heads and tails at the same time, right? Guaranteed every single time your cooldowns line up. Additionally, having a Lucky Fatebound coin reduces the cooldown of Deathmark by 30 seconds and Kingsbane by 15. This is where the real kind of juice comes in. And Deathmark being a 90-second cooldown and Kingsbane being a 45-second cooldown is where the gameplay difference comes in between Fatebound and Deathstalker in the next season. So, for all purposes, playing Fatebound as Assassination in Season 3, you are a 90-second spec. There are some issues with that. Mainly, your trinket choice. Right now, as of filming this, Araz's Ritual Forge is ridiculously strong. Like, it got nerfed 10% and it's still crazy. So, this is a 2-minute trinket. Not having it every time you press Deathmark means that it's going to turn into a 3-minute trinket, and that severely hurts the trinket itself, right? The trinket value goes significantly down if you have to cast it every 3 minutes instead of every 2. The best 130 trinket as of now comes from Echo Dome Aldani, and it's this Lily of the Eternal Weave. At max item level, this is about 10,000 mastery for 15 seconds on a 130 cooldown. And Araz is a stupid amount of agility over 30 seconds, but it decays, right? So if you don't have a 130 trinket, with current tuning, you can play Ritual Forge. It just kind of sucks. And the best way to actually go about it is to unequip the 4-piece or simply hold. Like, if you don't have the 4-piece, you play 2-minute anyways. But you would simply hold for 2 minutes so that you still get the coins from Kingsbane. Yeah, I mean, it's rough. But it is better to play 130. So go farm your Lily, hope you get a Lily in your vault. The other alternative is from Halls of Atonement. There's this Cursed Stone Idol, which gives crit chance. And this is also a 1:30 cooldown. This is, however, significantly worse than the Lily as of right now. And then there's also the Nether Prism. This is an interesting one, but the issue with this is that it is a melee version of the Season 1 trinket, Spy Masters. And you don't have a trinket on pull with this because it needs to stack up, and then you cast it every 1:30. So it doesn't ever get to full stacks. It doesn't get close to full stacks, but you can use it as a 1:30 trinket. So there's all of that, right, to think about. But those are kind of your options right now. There is also still Signet of the Priory, from Priory, obviously. And that's a 2-minute trinket that you can use. This is also not that great, because it's a 2-minute trinket. So same problems as the Ritual Forge. You still want to macro everything to Deathmark, for the record. There's currently a bug with Kingsbane that's making it difficult for us to theory craft properly. Hopefully it gets fixed, and if it does get fixed, and there's changes, I'll go over all of those changes. I'm just doing what we have right now. Okay, then we have some things to go over in terms of like optimization. The first of which, I'm just going to show you rotationally and talk through it. There should be some obvious stuff. There might be some non-obvious stuff. For now, I'm going to be playing Improved Growth Master Assassin. When the patch goes live and you have your 4-piece, I think that you should be playing Vicious Venoms, but just for the sake of example here, I'm going to be playing Master Assassin. Also, I think it's more fun because the burst is higher, so... So first things first, right, you're going to get your flip, and you're going to Envenom before Deathmark as per usual. However, Shiv first, then Deathmark, then Kingsbane, and then you're going into your rotation. You Vanish, get your flips, and then you're good to go. Kingsbane lasts a long time, though, so you need to hold this Shiv until the end of your Kingsbane. So that's a slight difference. You have to hold it for a little bit, and now you're in your rotation, right? We're good to go now. So as you're just doing your rotation, whatever, yada yada yada, your Shiv comes back up. What do you do with it? Absolutely nothing. You're waiting for this Kingsbane, right? As this Kingsbane comes back up, that's going to be the time when you send your Shiv. But because of the cooldowns, you can't send it at the start, or else you won't have 2 for Deathmark. So this Kingsbane is just going raw, right? And you're waiting for the last 8 seconds here. Bang. Now you're getting your Shiv off, and you're good to go. Notice how Cold Blood was used with Kingsbane. I have it macroed. That is the optimal thing to do. And they will line up every single time now. So no issues there. You will always match your edge case from your Kingsbane. Now, as we're getting everything back up, right, we don't have Vanish, but we have all of our cooldowns. And that is going to be the same rotation as before. So we're going to Shiv, Deathmark, Kingsbane, and we're off. Boom. We're again waiting for the last 8 seconds of Kingsbane. This is according, like, if and when they fix the bug. And we're right back. Now, we could do this again, right? That is the rotation, but we could do it again, and then Vanish will line up again for the next Deathmark, right? We're going to hold this Vanish for the next Deathmark, and then repeat the opener. That is going to be at 3 minutes, and everything lines back up again. Now, astute observers might have noticed that I'm shiving before Deathmark. Why would I ever do that? The reason why you would shiv before Deathmark is if you have the 2-set and the 4-set. Mostly the 2-set. What ends up happening is you're flipping a lot of edge case coins whenever you're pressing Deathmark and Kingsbane, and you're doing it very often. So this is a fairly minor min-max, but one that's very low impact. Shiv increases nature damage through improved Shiv, and the coins do cosmic damage, which are a portion nature damage. So when you press Shiv, and then you press Deathmark and Kingsbane, the coins that you're flipping are getting buffed. So you want to make sure that you're shiving before Deathmark and Kingsbane in order to buff those big coin hits. And that's really about it. Now, aside from that, not really much else to it. Vanish use is kind of similar. The only thing that you need to really pay attention to is that you are vanishing during the effects of Cold Blood. This should happen naturally. I'm out of practice, whatever. So like right here, we're in Cold Blood. So if you vanish here, you match 2, right? That's the only thing you need to care about. You can do it on the first, you can do it on the second. It doesn't particularly matter all that much. But you just need to make sure that you're vanishing during your Deathmark, during the Cold Blood, right? Aside from that, stat-wise, everything is fairly similar. Deathstalker, however, doesn't like as much crit as Fatebound. And when I say doesn't like as much, I don't mean crit is now your main stat. But if you think about it, what does Deathstalker have? Darkest Night, which is a guaranteed Envenom crit, right? Guaranteed means you don't need crit to make this better. This is just simply critting all the time. So crit is devalued slightly. For M+ as well, right? Momentum of Despair gives you crit chance, so you already have inbuilt crit, devalues it slightly. With Fatebound, the thing you have is Deal Fate, which is when you trigger Seal Fate, you get an additional combo point. Meaning, as you have more crit, crit is more valuable, right? More crit means more combo points from Deal Fate. You also have additional critical strike damage. This is augmented, right? Only the critical strike portion. So as you deal more Envenom crits, you're going to get more Fate Intertwined damage. So, yeah, crit's good. We like crit. There is some guaranteed crit from Inevitable End, but at the same time, it's not as much as Darkest Night, and it's not as big of a portion. This is mainly here to flip the coins, and the coins themselves can also crit. So, that's a good combination of things. If I still have it, or if the coin got rid of it, perhaps, you can actually see Fatebound Tails, this is the instant proc, is doing 12% of my damage. Or you can't see it because Bone Spike is keeping me in combat. We love that. Thank you, Bone Spike. Anyways, 12% of my damage here from the Tails coin, right? And these hit fairly hard, right? On a dummy here, you see 2 million max on a normal hit, 4 million on a crit. whereas Envenom is doing roughly the same. So you can think of these almost as mini Envenoms. They are basically doing the same damage as Envenom. It's kind of bonkers. With that being said, Kingsbane also up there now. The tier set is still bugged, which means that I can actually show you. Maybe they fixed it since then. Hot fixes have been rolling in so slowly over the last week. Not everything has gotten fixed. But essentially, what ends up happening is when you press Kingsbane, right, you have this buff up here, and this buff is telling you how many stacks of Kingsbane you have, like how many poisons you've applied. So this is ramping up. And now you see it resets, but I still have Kingsbane on the target. Now, the problem is that the tier set increases the duration of Kingsbane by 4 seconds, but they didn't increase the buff by 4 seconds. So the buff expires and then has to refresh itself. So the last 4 seconds of Kingsbane are actually really weak right now. But they said they fixed it in a hotfix, and then they didn't. So we're just waiting for that to show up at some point. So Kingsbane is actually even stronger than it already is. And even now, right, it's doing a significant portion of my damage just wailing on a dummy. So all of that's really good stuff. Where would you actually play Fatebound? Right? That is the question on everyone's mind. Where would you play Fatebound? You'd play Fatebound in Raid mainly. This is not Raid. This is Raid. Plexus Sentinel. This is a fight with no ads. And the ads on Mythic that do spawn only spawn in the intermission, and they are spread, which means you don't lose all of the bonus damage from Delivered Doom. And Fate Intertwined is not really hurting you in any way, and there's no caustic value. Caustic Spatter, obviously, big value, but it's only big value if your Tails coins are actually spattering, and since they're weaker when you don't have they're weaker when you have ads, it's also weaker spattering. A little strange. So, Plexus Sentinel, perfectly fine. Lumathar is a little bit of a question mark. There are ads on Lumathar, the circles that come in to kind of, that you have to break through the walls. Those count as nearby enemies. However, you don't get that many, and in Phase 2, there are no more circles. It's just a pure single target fight. So while there are ads up sometimes, I think Lumathar is actually going to be a Fatebound fight, and you just have to make sure that your cooldowns aren't directly running into those circles. So there might be some cringe kind of like hold cooldowns if this comes up, blah, 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 blah. And then like fight timing issues where you're getting an extra set, or maybe you're not getting an extra set of cooldowns because you held previously for the circles. And it's going to be a whole mess, but I think at the end of the day, Lumathar is a Fatebound fight, as long as you don't get screwed over by the incoming walls that you have to break. Soulbinder Nazindiri. Soulbinder. There are a ton of ads on this fight. This is not a Fatebound fight. End of story. Forge Weaver Araz. This is an interesting one. Forge Weaver is right now a little bit of a toss-up to me. I think this could be a Fatebound fight, but there are some issues. So first of all, the reason why this could be a Fatebound fight is because Deathstalker on this is awful. You have to move your mark around a lot to the Collectors, to the Arcane Echo, back to the boss, back to the Echo, back to the boss. Moving your mark around a lot is really difficult. That being said, this is a very heavy caustic fight. These Arcane Echoes spawn, and they're single target, but you have to swap to them, and then you get a bunch of these small orbs. You get 3 of these small orbs. The intermission has some attendance. So while there is AoE, you are still causticking quite a bit. These ads are up quite often, these small ads, and these are the ones that will hurt Fatebound the most in terms of Tails damage. I think this could be a fight that you play Fatebound on, and there might be some cheese about it, because if you're allowed to get away with it, you can stay on the boss and let other people handle the ads. The ads on testing weren't particularly that heavy of a DPS check. So if you can get away with it and you can stay on the boss, you can crank boss damage. Now, obviously, this is going to probably not be the way to parse. Who knows what the parse strat is going to be. But in terms of boss damage, I think Fatebound, if you stay on the boss, is going to be massive. There is also going to be a damage phase, a damage burn at the end of the intermission. Which, I don't know the name of it right now. Maybe it's the start or whatever. I don't exactly know. But the point is, at the end of every intermission, there's a 100% increased damage phase, which you can abuse pretty hard since Fatebound's burst is higher than Deathstalker. So this might be a situation where Fatebound is better for boss damage, worse for the parse, better for prog, worse for ad damage. Depends how this boss is tuned, really, and depends how strong the ads are, and if you can get away with not being in the clump of ads and suffering. The faster these small ads die, the more Fatebound will do. So, I think it's viable. I think it's good. But really, time will tell, and we'll see how it's tuned. Soul Hunters, this is a 3-target cleave fight. Fatebound technically maybe is playable if and only if the bosses are spread out and you're not stacking them. During testing, it wasn't that difficult to stack them, but it realistically, I think in order to actually do damage and parse on this fight, they need to be stacked. 3 targets is sort of the breakpoint where Fatebound loses. Pretty hard, actually. So I think for like the ease of not moving your mark around, Fatebound is still playable, but it's probably not optimal. That is kind of the read that I have right now. So keep that in mind. If your tanks in your raid suck at keeping bosses together, Fatebound could be good, but it is difficult. Fractalus. This is the patchwork fight. And by God, this is a Fatebound wet dream. 1 boss, DPS check fight, and I believe the Enrage is better for 130 than it is for 2 minutes. I could be wrong on that, I haven't checked my notes. But as far as I'm aware, the Enrage should be at like 545? 6? Something like that? Around 6? And so you don't get your 6-minute cooldowns off if you're playing Deathstalker, but you do get another set of cooldowns if you're playing Fatebound. So that's going to be good. Like at least another Kingsbane. Depending on how this is on Mythic and how it's tuned, and if there's an Enrage cheese, or if there's like a strat that lets you do another extra set of walls, it might be like 620, in which case you don't, but it's still banger single target fight. Fatebound, huge. Nexus King. We didn't see much of Nexus King because on Mythic, this fight is insane. And so we didn't actually get that far. Here's the thing. Phase 1, definitely a Fatebound thing. Phase 2, probably also Fatebound. But when you go up on the platforms, Fatebound suffers. It suffers so bad because you have to go up on the platform and there's these 2 dudes. And these 2 dudes, with the Titans and all the ads around them, it's like 6, 7, 8 target AoE. It sucks. It sucks real bad. But then once you get back down, it's 2 target cleave with Saldahar and Voidwing. 2 target cleave, Fatebound should still technically win, and you get the bonus of not being cringe with your Deathstalker's mark. So I'm edging on the side of Deathstalker being better. However, again, depending on how the end phases look like, depending on how much the damage is needed, depending on the timing of cooldowns, depending on how strong the platforms are in terms of like being a prog wall, Fatebound, again, could be the move. So keep that in mind. If you are planning on progging this, it might be worth checking out what people are doing on very early kills. by the time you get to it, I'm assuming people have it figured out. And then you have Dimensius. Now, obviously, we don't know anything about Dimensius, really, aside from what is here in the journal. And there's no ads. Kind of strange. At least not model-wise. There are these two mini-bosses. We don't know if they're on the same platform or if they're on different platforms or if they're, like... I don't know. I don't know. Don't blame me. But for the majority of the fight, it looks one target. In comes Fatebound. So, unironically, after the buffs that happened earlier this week, and when Kingsbane gets fixed, we're looking at 1. We're at for sure 1. For sure 2. Probably for sure 3. And then maybe 4, 5 bosses. 6. Like, 5 to 6 bosses might be Fatebound bosses for Assassination. It is very good. It is very good. There are still simulations happening. Obviously, this PTR has been super behind. And so, because this PTR has been super behind, we haven't gotten all of the theory crafting done, and there's been a ton of bugs. So, not sure how exactly it's going to look like the same time in like 2 weeks. There might be a bunch of tuning, might be a bunch of trinket tuning. You know, maybe they giga buff, you know, the Ecodome, Ecodome trinket, Ecodome. Maybe they giga buff Lily, making Fatebound much stronger. Maybe they finally, as they were supposed to, nerf the hell out of Ritual Forge. Who knows? Could be. So any nerf to Ritual Forge simply makes Fatebound stronger. Any buff to 130 trinkets simply makes Fatebound stronger. And as of now, 2-minute trinkets are still notably stronger than 130s. So Fatebound is only on the way up, and I think it's going to be very good. On the fights with ads, you of course still can play Caustic. It's not an issue. Right now, 2 Vicious Venoms is better, but I'm not entirely sure about that right now because Fatebound is so burst heavy. Maybe you do want Master Assassin Proof Garrote. But in general in Raid, I would recommend something like this where you just hot swap it in, just like Deathstalker. It's the same talents. Yeah. Anyways. That's all I have for Fatebound for now. Hopefully I hit everything. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Hopefully I don't need to make a follow-up video. If I do need to make a follow-up video, I'll try to keep it a little bit shorter. But that's all I know for Fatebound. And, yeah. Did I miss anything? I don't think so. 2-set, 4-set, really good. 2-set is significantly better, however, because the 4-set jank with the 90-second 2-minute thing and the trinkets. The 4-set might not even sim better for you until you have a 90-second trinket, as of now. So, keep that in mind. Sims will be updated in time for the patch. You don't have to worry about that. Right now, they are not. Still working on some APL stuff. Double-checking some things. Anyways, bye, have a good one, everyone. Hopefully your first week goes well. M0s, no M pluses. And yeah, let me know if you have questions. And Wowhead Guide will be updated on Monday? Bye, 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 bye.